So hi, Sairupa, welcome.
Hi, Talia. Great to see you. It's been
Good
a
to see
while.
you. Yeah, it has been a while. We haven't talked in a while, so we had to do some
Yeah.
catching up before recording for sure.
Yeah.
But
Been a few years.
today, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we was like catch up on a few years of post school. But today we're going to talk about self-care and Ayurveda. And you are a naturopathic doctor, but also an Ayurvedic practitioner. And maybe tell us a bit about what Ayurveda is.
Yeah, definitely. So Ayurveda is sometimes called like the sibling to yoga. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, but it goes hand in hand with yoga. It's considered to be like a 5,000-year-old-ish science from South Asia, India, from Sri Lanka as well. It's really sustained in those areas, preserved super well. And Ayu means life, and Veda means wisdom. So it's often translated to be the wisdom of life, or the wisdom guidelines for vitality is sometimes the way that I like to define it. And Ayurvedic philosophy involves kind of understanding like the individual person, like from their constitution. And with that, we'll give an understanding of their health and what their needs might be. And that's because Ayurveda says that everything that exists in the universe, like in terms of the elements, also exists within the person. And so we look at things in the 5-element kind of way. So we look at space or ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And so those elements that make up the universe also make up the person and everything around us. And so kind of understanding what's your makeup in terms of your elemental constitution can give us a lot of information into your health as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of an intro to Ayurveda.
Like our own individual combination of the 5 elements. We'll
Yeah.
sort of like what diseases we get, or what we struggle with in life, or how we should eat, or how much sleep we should get, like all of it.
All of it, exactly. So it'll give us an idea of what our tendencies are, our weaknesses, and then also our strengths as well. Yeah, so kind of, we were talking about the doshas before. So these 5 elements give way to the 3 doshas, or the 3 constitutional types. Yeah, and for me, I found it really interesting. I'll just share a little bit about why I kind of came to Ayurveda as well.
Please.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I've told you the story before, but it's kind of interesting in the sense that, I went through Ayurvedic training before I came to naturopathic medicine. And yeah, it was beautiful for me. I had been practicing yoga for a few years in my early 20s. And then I had been dealing with eczema my whole life. It was like chronic eczema, but it just worsened. Like it worsened really bad. At this time, I was like 22, 23, and having like a severe outbreak. And been used to going to doctors, conventional doctors, and they would generally say, yeah, you're just unlucky. There's nothing we can really do about it, right? It's just the way it is. There's, no digestive guidance at all, right?
Right. You're not sick, like you don't have a major disease, so
yeah, it's just put on this hydrocortisone cream and it'll be soothed that way. And of course, it helps because it just calms your immune system, but never got to the root cause of it. And so I was going through a really big flare. I was working outside one summer and just was feeling an aggravation of all of my skin symptoms, and I really felt like this call to figure out something on a deeper way, because I'd been practicing yoga. I learned a little bit about Ayurveda as well. So I found an Ayurvedic practitioner who's still like a really close mentor of mine, and I work with her now. Her name's Dr. Ismat, and maybe I can also add a link in the show notes for her. She's amazing. And she runs a school in Toronto as well.
She has a practice, I think, near my clinic at Jane and Bloor.
Yeah, that's right. She does. Yeah, she does. So I went to go see her, and what I was blown away by was it was the first time that someone really kind of looked at the whole of what I'd been experiencing and actually directly asked about my emotions and the stress I was under, and what was going on more of a heart level than anything else. And there was some harder stuff happening in my life at that time that I needed support with. And she made that connection between the emotions and also skin. My skin kind of flare up. So with her kind of looking at my tongue, which is a huge way of like understanding someone's constitution, feeling my pulse, she was able to assess what my constitution was and what I needed and what I needed to kind of decrease as well in my life. And a few of the things she told me was like, you know, things that would also kind of compare to TCM or like Chinese medicine, things that you and I would have learned about in school. But, you know, avoid cold foods, make sure that you're having more warm or lubricating soupy foods, avoid too much salt and spice, and then try doing a full body oil massage, which is like specific to Ayurveda, but it's just a beautiful self-care practice. And so she guided me in that. And, you know, I honestly cured my eczema after that through following Ayurvedic principles. I haven't had a flare up since then, so early on.
Wow.
So Ayurveda for me really helped to kind of, just understand myself on a deeper level so I could really help to alleviate the things, the skin conditions that I was suffering with. And from then, I just wanted to study more. So I studied with her and did a practitioner training program, and then decided to go into naturopathic medicine because I wanted the foundation in more of the diagnosis from the Western perspective as well. And also the primary care perspective, because Ayurveda is not regulated in Canada at this time.
Right. Like we have training in traditional Chinese medicine, but not in Ayurveda as part of our training as naturopaths. So it's a nice complement.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
And there's such an overlap with traditional Chinese medicine because they still do pulse and tongue diagnosis. But I think that TCM originated from Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurveda is older, is it not? I think
some people say that. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say, but I think that, some folks definitely say that there's an origin in Ayurveda, and maybe TCM kind of just got more detailed and specified over the years from the South Asian.
When it's a little bit. It's beautiful. So it's like, it's understanding what your constitution was, so your individual constitution, how that may have strayed out of balance and how that might have contributed to the eczema you're dealing with, and then how to move things back into balance to get rid of the disease state.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea with constitutions is that every person is born with a specific constitution. And usually that would be like 2 doshas, like 2 constitutional types. And then, over the years, things can get exacerbated. And usually we see with an analysis or an assessment of a person like tongue, looking at their body shape, how they are, and then also assessing their pulse, you can see which doshas might be higher or which elements might be higher in the person. And then that can kind of help to understand what to decrease or increase, and then what we can do to help bring them back into balance. Because the goal is actually to help them to be more as their original constitution.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Because I think I am Kapha, which is the water earth type.
Yeah, that would make sense for you. Totally. Yeah, I'm also Kapha actually. I'm a Vata Kapha though.
I think I might be Vata Kapha too, but I don't know. It's because Pitta is like the fire.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And Vata is like the air, ether, and then Kapha is more like the water and earth.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And Vata is that spacey one, right?
The ungrounded. Yeah. I mean, we have like the ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph as well, which I think is just more Western medicine. And that really, it fits those categories as well. Like I think this has been extrapolated along the lines of just how we understand different constitutional types. Like there are people
definitely
are generally more muscular, and people that are generally more prone to anxiety or digestive issues or dry conditions and things like that. And we kind of know that intuitively.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And then, the Pitta type might be just like more moderate or average size. Really sharp and direct with how they use their words or their ideas. Typically take on more of a leadership role, or their type A personalities, and then might deal with more of those heat conditions that come up.
Like heartburn and
heartburn, and sometimes like even leading into like ulcerative colitis. Skin stuff might be acne, rosacea. And then for Kapha, more voluptuous in terms of a body type, really thick, shiny hair, big eyes. And then they typically have, like, because of that water and earth quality, they just have such a stability to them.
Right.
So they tend to like have more of that grounded energy and compassion and love to give. And then a tendency towards mucus, watery conditions. Yeah.
Yep.
Asthma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then sometimes depression because of that heavier quality.
Right. It's like there's more tendency towards lethargy and low energy and
Right.
like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Low motivation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
really fascinating. And like, I mean, you could do quizzes online to kind of get an idea as well, but it's always better to be able to see a practitioner, to be able to have that full assessment to see where you're at. It's amazing with the pulse is actually you can feel the original constitution, even though they might not be in that original state, right? But you can feel it through the pulse, what their original constitution might have been. And you can also see it in the shape of the tongue. The tongue says a lot about the original constitution based on that shape. Not necessarily the tongue coating, which is more acute, that's showing like where the imbalance might currently be. Yeah. But the shape says a lot, which is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Right. It's like sort of what we're born with, and then the accumulation that occurs on top of it is the disease state or the imbalance state.
Right. Yeah.
What was the diagnosis of the eczema? Do you mind sharing? Like, was it
well, I had a pitta aggravation. Yeah. So I was having a mix of so vata elevated and then also pitta elevated. So although pitta is not part of my constitution, I actually had to calm that and calm the vata down. Get more towards my
moisturize.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for me, I have to be watchful in summer season and definitely watchful in like the fall season as well, which is more dry.
Right.
And then towards winter. But yeah, there's a lot of tools that I'm so grateful that I've gained over the years to kind of help support me through the changes, to kind of keep me feeling a little bit more imbalanced or grounded into myself. Of course, it's not always that way by any means, but yeah, the tools are there, which is amazing.
Well, it's so different from just being told like, oh, well, there's nothing we can really find, so good luck to you. It's just the way it is. You're unlucky, like you said. It's like, oh, actually, here's what your natural constitution is. So you learn about yourself generally, what you're like, and what your, I guess, Achilles heels might be. So it's like, okay, so this has a higher probability of coming back in drier and hotter weather. And so during those times, that's when you really need to do your soups and stews and focus on moisturizing your skin, doing your oil massages. And it gives you that knowledge, and that it empowers you to be able to navigate the waters of our environment and maintain your health.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like we've come kind of far away from those tools, right? In terms of like being in tune with nature, in tune with natural cycles. And Ayurveda really emphasizes just being in tune with the natural rhythms of the day from morning to night, and then also seasonal cycles as well. And, knowing what your constitution is, and also applying these rituals based on seasonal changes and the day just has a beautiful impact.
Yeah. Right. Like we're products of nature, so we're immersed within it, and everything that we eat can shift us in some way. The outside environment can shift us in some way, our thoughts. It's like, rather than seeing health as this steady state, it's this constant dynamic flow. And the more we understand it, the better we can be in balance or be balancing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it makes me think of that beautiful term that healing is not linear. Right. Yeah. In any way, it's like always like a dynamic flow. And I think the thing that I love most about Ayurveda is that it really teaches you to kind of tune into what your needs are from moment to moment and, season to season, just because, yeah, for sure, you're not in any way like going to be in a perfect state of health. But when you tune in, knowing what your needs are can be like a key.
Right.
Because so many of us just kind of numb out and not necessarily are able to feel like what our true needs are. But, understanding your constitution, understanding like, what your weaknesses or tendencies might be, and you can have more space to kind of apply the things that are helpful and beneficial for you.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like there's even kapha times of day and vata times of day. So it's like for me, I'm not going to go and do all kinds of crazy things like, at the wrong time of day, especially knowing my constitution. So it's like even understanding the rhythms of nature, like you said.
Yeah,
And
totally.
how that,
Or as a person that menstruates as well, right? Like knowing like what to do during your cycle can have such a huge impact as well. So Ayurveda
totally.
has beautiful guidelines on that too. And
Yeah.
there's so much. And for our culture now that like is has such difficulty with sleep, and like sleep hygiene in Ayurveda, that's like such a huge foundational principle. There's something called Ratricharya, which is night rituals that help with, deepening your rest and making it as restorative as possible as well. It's like one of the major pillars of health is sleep in
Right.
Ayurveda. Yeah.
Can you
Sleep, digestion, elimination.
sleep, digestion, elimination. Yeah.
Yeah. And also sex as well, sexual health.
Oh, cool. Can you speak a little bit about the sleep rituals and just how they might apply to each constitution?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's start with Vata. So Vata, because Vata tends to be like so light in constitution, a lighter energy, that they have more of a tendency towards insomnia than the other two doshas do. And they would typically wake up in the night at a specific time. And this is between the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like this is considered more of the space and ether time of the night. Yeah, which I know sounds pretty abstract, but it's interesting because seeing patients, it does apply.
It totally applies. Even with vata aggravation, which is that whole like adrenal fatigue, adrenal imbalance kind of person.
Totally. Yeah. So we'll see with those patients exactly that they typically are, more burnt out and waking up at that specific time, unable to fall back asleep. So the recommendation is Vatas tend to need more sleep than any other dosha does. And to go to sleep by 10 p.m. is ideal, or even before that, just like to get into bed ready to fall asleep by 10 p.m. would be ideal. And they should wake up, like they should give themselves about 8 hours of sleep. Yeah, so that's a really good amount of sleep. And the kind of recommendations to do before bed are to, make sure, because Vata has a lot of space and air, is to bring qualities of earth to them more, earth and also water, those heavier elements, to feel that stability, that calmness, that kind of regulation of that nervous system that they need. Yeah, so recommendations for an unwinding and like calming down period of night between like the hours of 9 to 10 p.m. Avoiding all electronics. Of course, this is more of a modern recommendation, but definitely recommended. Doing an oil massage, especially for the feet. And I'm not sure if you used ghee before, but ghee topically. But it's pretty amazing. So ghee is clarified butter, and in Ayurveda, we consume it. We recommend consuming it for certain constitutions, but you can also apply it topically to the skin. And because ghee, it's made from butter, it's got a really heavy, nourishing quality to it. And so sometimes it's recommended to actually massage the feet with ghee before bed.
It kind of brings the energy down and away from the head.
Exactly. Massaging your feet, maybe essential oil that would be calming, and some essential oils for Vata, lavender oil, vetiver is really heavy and grounding as well. Jasmine's really nice, and sandalwood. So all of those are really, really calming. And heavy blankets. Yeah, using heavy blankets. Maybe doing a calming meditation before bed can be really helpful. I always teach Bhramari Pranayama. Have you heard of that? The humming bee sound?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really simple one. And maybe we can like just put a link up for this one. But the humming sound is, it's so good for most of the doshas, but it's just so relaxing for the nervous system. And so even taking 5 breaths where you're just inhaling, and then you let out a sound on the exhale, and you can plug your ears. Maybe just laying down. Yeah, and then that can be incredibly softening for the nervous system, relaxing. So those are a few tips. Some other recommendations might also be like doing a head massage as well, or putting ghee across the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
just putting all that heaviness on
Right.
to just make them feel relaxed and calm.
It's like something to kind of ground the air, and to kind
Yeah,
of like give it some stability and some support and some substance so that the person.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And, I often make the recommendation if someone's waking up in the middle of the night to also kind of reach for an essential oil that might be calming. But this is going to sound a little bit out there, but heavier rocks, like having rocks in your space and just maybe holding on to them or putting them close to your feet as well for a Vata person, that can also feel good and calming and relaxing. Yeah. So something like that.
Or like weighted bean bags or something, like heaviness.
Definitely.
Or
Yeah.
weighted blanket. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Weighted black blankets are amazing for a Vata person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
It has,
so
so I just
yeah, so
it has
so I
like
mentioned Vata. Yeah, I mentioned Vata, but sorry, did you have a question?
no, I was just gonna say the rocks is not so out there when you think of like how we does calm anxiety. It's been proven that weighted blankets and weight on the body
Yeah,
does calm us and soothe us.
totally. Yeah, and not necessarily putting the rocks on our body, but holding them or maybe putting them close to the feet. It can feel really good. And yeah, that's a recommendation that I make sometimes for folks.
That's cool. Yeah, you were gonna say something about pitta now.
Yeah, I was going to say, the same rules kind of apply for Pitta, but a main thing for Pitta is that they have a tendency towards overwork, especially at night as well. And so also making sure that they get to bed by that 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. time zone would be ideal, and putting away their work for a couple of hours beforehand. There's a time of night that's a Pitta time of night, and they should really try to be sleeping during that time. It's 10 to 2 a.m. And sometimes for a Pitta person, if they are awake, they may not want to go to sleep at that time because their ideas are flowing. They might really want to work on a project or get a few things completed. And, just to ensure that they're sleeping in that time frame, it's really, really great if they can just get to sleep before 10 p.m. or, I say even 11 p.m. is okay. They don't need as much sleep as a Vata person, but yeah, I mean, getting at least 7 hours is ideal.
But if they're going to bed at 2 a.m. every night because they're just captured by all these ideas, they can run the risk of burning themselves out.
Yeah, exactly. Making sure that they say no to certain projects as well, so they're not taking too much on, is really important for a Pitta too. Just having more of that heat, that fire. They do want to take on a lot typically. And then, they might be a tendency towards being a workaholic, a work focused, and yeah, just making sure that's separated from their night sanctuary, their serene room.
Right.
To keep it in. Yeah.
Something cooling and soothing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, essential oils, since I mentioned them for Vata, I'll just mention a few for Pitta as well. So lavender is also great. Sandalwood's still amazing for Pitta. Jasmine's also good. So those three are really versatile. So I would say those are amazing to go with. I usually have a tendency to use or recommend lavender because we also have seen that studies show that it's amazing for sleep, for helping with anxiety and also sleep. Yeah, so that's really great. Yeah. And kapha, yeah, so for a kapha person, because they already have the earth and water, they generally don't actually need help to fall asleep. But they need support in feeling they're most rested in the morning when they wake up. Sleep rituals apply for everyone, right? So these Ratri Charya, the sleep rituals, making sure that you're staying away from your electronics, you're in a dark room, you have like a serene environment or peaceful environment to sleep in. But for a kapha person, they actually should sleep for less time. So it's always recommended that they wake up right before sunrise. Yeah, to feel just more motivated in the day and to feel more energy and to kind of get out of this tendency towards not wanting to get up in the morning and to feel more lethargic in the morning as well. So because they have more earth and water, we want to encourage a little bit more stimulation for them, and that waking up before sunrise and maybe drinking some hot ginger tea to be generally stimulating and warming for a colder constitution. It can help. Yeah, it can help a lot.
maybe moving in the morning as well to kind of just get circulation flowing and get the system waking up. Mm-hmm.
Definitely going for a walk, or, doing sun salutations.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like the Vata recommendation better. That's
yeah, right.
Too. It's like we're sometimes drawn, I think, to things that imbalance us a little bit, right? So like the kapha craves more sleep. It's like, oh, it sounds good. I get to sleep in. I want to sleep in. I want to get 8+ hours.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so true that sometimes we do crave what's not healthy for us. And, in Ayurveda, they say that it's actually when you're in a, like a fairly good state of balance, but your doshas are slightly aggravated, then you generally crave what's good for you. But when things are actually quite out of balance, or they have been for a long time, then you might be craving things that aren't as good for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it just takes more time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Things are like pushing out of balance too. Yeah.
Right.
So cool. Those are great tips. Like, it's awesome because you can even, I'm sure people listening can even identify kind of already what they might be, what their constitution is, just by hearing about the elements and sort of what the tendencies are. And then like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I always ask people to think about what element they're most drawn to as well, or what elements they're most drawn to. And oftentimes those elements might have a reflection for them as well, or be part of their constitution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're a surfer, really consider that you might be kapha or pitta, or some water type. And
totally.
you mentioned too, so we were going to talk self-care, and before we recorded, about how Ayurveda has a unique approach to self-care. Maybe you can speak about that, about swasta.
Yeah, I'd love to. So Ayurveda, outlines these beautiful rituals for the day. It's called dinacharya. Dina means day, charya basically means conduct or rituals.
So Rastacharya is for night?
Ratri charya. Ratri means night. Yeah. And by the way, these are Sanskrit terminologies. I don't read or speak Sanskrit, but I just have learned or picked up these words through the study of Ayurveda. And then, so there's dinacharya, there's ratri charya, which is night, and then rutu charya, which is seasonal practices. And, I won't be able to cover all of these for sure, but I wanted to share the reasons why, these practices are so powerful and specified in Ayurveda. So the definition of health in Ayurveda is swasta. And swasta, the way that it's defined into English translations, are usually to be centered in yourself. And one of my favorites is through this author, Robert Svoboda. I'm not sure if you read any of his books, but he says to be established in yourself. Swasta, to be established in yourself. So I love that. And, the purpose in Ayurveda is not necessarily just to live a long life, to keep your body just working, right? It's to live a long life with good quality of life as well. So these rituals, they help to protect your body, to provide resilience, to deal with the stresses of the world and whatever might be impacting your health as well. And to find that space within yourself that you feel centered and established. And, for me, that means that we're able to kind of feel what we need. I mentioned this before, and I think this is a really important key in Ayurveda. And what I love very, very much about it is that it asks you to get more in tune with what your personal needs are, and not necessarily rely on what other health practitioners are saying all the time in terms of what supplements you need, or, what medications you need and things like this, but tuning in on the foundational level of what you need from moment to moment and day to day and season to season as well. And, for me, that looks like, when I'm, for example, dealing with a few different things in my life, in terms of if it's work related or caring for parents or caring for a small daughter, knowing that I might need to say no to certain things, take a day of rest if I can, if I have that, space to do, and going to sleep early. I've been going to sleep at 9 p.m. recently, and it's been helpful. So just being okay, I'm going to ask what I truly need in this moment, what's going to be beneficial for my body. And, I do need that heaviness. So how can I invite that in more right now? I'm going to make some some delicious, more lubricating, nourishing foods. One of my favorites is using mung beans with rice, khichdi. Yeah. Or making just mung bean soup. Yeah. So things like that, which is amazing. Making sure I have my thermos that's like full of warm water as well. Yeah. So things like that. I mentioned to you before that I also think that that self-care is, self-care it's such a common term that's used. It's like it's a popularized term, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like Ayurveda doesn't necessarily call these practices self-care practices, the rituals that are recommended, but they're called just daily life rituals, things that can enhance your life when we choose to kind of incorporate them as much as possible. And I think that it helps to build resilience in a person. Ayurveda has this kind of view of having resilience. It's a particular word called ojas. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but it's similar to prana as well. Like prana means like life force energy, and ojas is just having resilience, having like a reservoir within you to be able to have good immunity, be able to deal with tough shit when it does come up, and like capacity as well. It's like a subtle energy that's unseen, but can be seen through the way a person kind of embodies basically good, the way they kind of deal with difficult situations when they come up, things like this. And that stress actually, the more that it comes on will deplete this energy, and then they have a tendency towards actually being more burnt out as well. So keeping that energy, that ojas up, is really important. And to do that, keeping your sleep good, eating well, eating close to your constitution as possible, and then being able to say no to things that aren't going to be beneficial to you or would be kind of draining this resource from you.
It's like you're removing the excesses that might be also like moving us out of balance as well. Pulling us away from ojas. I mean, it's interesting, like this theme of embodiment has come up so much in conversations I've been having, and when you say being centered and established in oneself, it's sort of what comes to mind. It's like being established within one's physical form, energetic form, and inhabiting that and taking that space up, and not just living in either the head cloud or being sort of pulled out of our I guess our balancing act that keeps us healthy and allows our immune system to be strong and our mental health to be strong and our digestion to work properly and all the things our body needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that embodied can be another term for swastha as well. Yeah. That's a beautiful way to describe it.
And it's interesting, the pillars of so sleep, and we went over that, and that's super important, and definitely a deficit that I see in most patients. I would say maybe not 100%, but a vast majority of people are not sleeping as well as they should. Even if we think we're sleeping well, when you dig a little bit deeper, I don't know about in your practice, but I usually find not amazing. There's usually like wake ups or shallow sleep or disruption with electronics being in the room and crashing in the day and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talk about digestion, elimination, and then sex. And maybe could you speak a little bit about, I'm interested in the sex. Let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sexual health, of course, is really important in Ayurveda. It's so there's three pillars of health, and the three pillars are sleep, digestion, and then elimination in there, of course, as well, and then sex. In terms of sexual health, it's it's different for each dosha, right? So it's kind of similar. It applies to what we're talking about, is that the lighter dosha, being more vata, actually benefits more from not expending their energy too much and should be actually conserving their energy more to protect that sexual energy. And in a way, it's also protecting your ojas, your ojasic energy, your reservoir of resilience. We could also say that. So, so, it's in Ayurveda, if you're a menstruating person, then it'd be really caution to avoid having sex during that time, because there's a downward energy and we don't want to actually push anything in a different direction. No judgment for anyone.
Yeah, I know.
These are just recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, with these recommendations,
Yeah.
even in traditional Chinese medicine, there are some guidelines around sex, and it's not about shame or anything like that. It's more about how sexual energy interacts with our vital energy, and how that can deplete or nourish it and shift the direction of flow in our bodies. And so it's not about sexual shame. I don't think that's really part of these sciences.
No, not at all. Not at all. Definitely. And thanks for naming that as well. Yeah. So definitely don't want to be shaming in any way. But yeah, these recommendations I find can be helpful for, looking at your constitution again, like what your needs are and what makes you feel good, what makes you feel best.
And I think that, if you're a Vata person and you are questioning if there's something wrong with you because you don't have that much of a libido or you feel depleted after sex, it just gives you more self-understanding. Like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense for me. I don't need to compare myself to other people I know who may be kapha, or Pitta constitutions.
Yeah. Exactly. It just gives more information about who you are. Exactly. And just kind of being comfortable in that, comfortable in your own skin and what your personal needs are. So yeah, Vata people tend, it's just actually just to be cautioned about not overdoing it. Also tendency to orgasm quickly. So like, because when you orgasm, sometimes there's just a huge release of ojas as well. And so, just being discerning on when you want to share that energy as well, in terms of like, is it an overdue? Like, are you giving too much in that moment? And could it be depleting for you, for your own resources? So, I think that there are traditional recommendations on how many times a month or something like that, but I feel like that's so personal. So I generally just say that, just tune into exactly what your needs and wants are, because it might just depend on what kind of month you're having as well, right? In terms of like, what are the external stresses and so on. Yeah. And for Pitta, it's just moderate, because they are moderate. So they tend to be really passionate people.
Fiery,
passionate people. So they can definitely maybe enjoy sex a little bit more often or frequently than a Vata person might be able to, and feel less affected or burnt out or tired. And their libido might be a little bit stronger too, where a Vata person, their libido may not be as strong, because these external factors affect their desire as well. Yeah. And then a Kapha person is considered to be the best lover of them all. Stamina and just like a lot to give, and lubrication, exactly, a lot to be able to give, and that ojas is so natural. Desire is strong as well, so they're considered to be like generous lovers as well. But I think that the main kind of thread throughout it all is just, again, just knowing that that your libido will change based on what's happening from season to season, and what's happening in your day life as well, and just tuning into what happens for you in certain circumstances. So I think it's, again, just so individual.
Well, I mean, and even if someone is kapha constitution, they can suffer from vata imbalance and feel like, and this is the whole, stress affecting someone's libido, or even the busy fall season and everything is dry and cold, and that might also affect our libido, put us more into a vata state. So like you said, things shift with seasons and with where we're at individually, and then also our constitution underlies that.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So just, going from season to season and seeing how you feel, and then, just being honest with that is really important. And then, if you're not feeling desire, that's also something to kind of look at in Ayurveda as well. If you're not feeling desire, or not feeling like your libido is in a balanced place, bringing that up with an Ayurvedic practitioner can be really, really helpful, because the doshas could be, as you mentioned, aggravated or imbalanced in some way, and bringing balance to that can help.
Right.
to improve your libido.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting, right? Because the elements are not just about one thing. So if someone's not feeling desire sexually, maybe they're also suffering from a lack of desire in general, for projects or even an appetite for food. Like there's all these ways that it can expand to include more than the thing that we're focused on.
Totally. Yeah. And that kind of is a beautiful bridge into talking about digestion or Agni.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you learned about that before, Talia? Agni?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's something I need more of.
Yeah, same with me most times as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so true, is that when we look at desire, that when we actually strengthen our inner fire, and that will also be like improving our digestion, then that can also help with how our libido is, and then also how we our desire for life, for projects, for getting excited about certain things in our life as well.
Is it Agni being the inner fire?
The inner fire. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, on that note, Agni is the inner fire or digestive fire, and it should be maintained for good swastha, for good health in Ayurveda. And when it's low, someone might feel sluggish appetite, slow digestion, not even a desire for food sometimes, like not a strong interest for food.
Mm-hmm.
And things kind of might bore them in terms of food. And then on top of that, malabsorption signs as well. So maybe you notice that there's spots on the nails, that the hair is not a great quality, or skin is not doing great. And then when we strengthen the Agni through digestive practices, taking certain herbs, and then also food, different foods that we would consume as well to keep the digestive system strong. When the Agni begins, yeah, exactly. Warming herbs. Ginger is one of the most favored, for sure. Yeah. And when we strengthen Agni, it can really help to, of course, absorb all of the goodness from our food, and then also give us more desire and energy for life and the projects we want, and even libido as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's not just, when we think of like digestion, it's how we incorporate something into our body, and it could include digesting thoughts, how we consume and digest ideas, and that the mental digestion as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really great point. I'm glad that you brought up, because Agni in Ayurveda is also about what you process in terms of like what you're dealing with on an emotional level, and then how you integrate it. Yeah, how you integrate it, how you process it, even what you consume in terms of books or watching shows, things like that, how you're taking that in.
Right.
Having a strong Agni can help with just in integrating different things that you're consuming. Yeah, and dealing with how you process trauma even.
Right. That was coming to mind, because I remember a conversation I had with my friend Ayan, who's a trauma therapist, EMDR therapist, and he used metaphors of digestive enzymes, in trauma work, in like allowing certain memories to be incorporated into our psyche, so that they're sort of so that they can be processed and dealt with. And it's that idea of that mental and emotional digestion.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. Yeah, I'll have to go back and listen to that. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. It's just, on the elemental level, Agni, having a strong Agni, like you have it on all kinds of different levels, but you have it on that digestive level, but you also have it on the elemental level. So that like when you take in different elements, like whether it is like through emotions or through food or whatever it is in your environment, that your body will process it into the elements that it also needs, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It's like this idea of drinking water and not feeling hydrated. It's like, some people are like, I drink water and it just kind of flows through me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes just strengthening the digestive fire, or even putting intention behind what they need as well can help with that absorption and assimilation of that particular element as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. So amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the take home is ginger. For most, I think for most constitutions, it's
Yeah.
helpful for digestion, right? Pitta
Yeah, definitely for
has,
fresh ginger. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, for the colder constitutions like Vata and Kapha, but I think Pitta usually does well digesting most things. I think they're pretty good digesters generally.
Yeah, definitely pretty good digesters in general, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Fresh ginger is actually good for all of the doshas. It's just the dry ginger that might be a little bit more pungent, too pungent for a pitta person, and
Mm,
even for the person a little bit pungent as well.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be great to talk about emotional tendencies as well. For all,
Yes. Yeah. Please do. Yeah.
yeah, that made me kind of
Mm,
think of that is that yeah, from the mental health aspect or even the mood, aspect as well, is that one of the questions that an Ayurvedic practitioner might inquire about is understanding what the tendency emotion is for the person. And so, oftentimes someone might be able to describe what their mood is in general, or what they might actually, their mood might have a tendency towards when they're faced with a difficult situation, right?
mm-hmm.
And I think for a Vata person, again, being more of the light, the air and space, they generally have a tendency towards anxiety, nervousness, worry, and then also numbness in a
Mm.
way. Yeah, a little bit of numbing or just kind of escaping
Like
through different
dissociation
ways.
or yeah.
Dissociation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, again, like all of these practices, getting someone in tune with their body and actually feeling their body, because, they're doing the massage practices and things like this, that can really help to just ground themselves into the way that they feel. And of course, meditation, breath work, all of these things can be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
We're just sort of calming that energy. So
Yeah,
Vata is like
calming
a
that
lot of
energy.
space, and ether, it's like these intangible elements. It's like
Right.
allowing those to ground and calm and settle and not move
Yeah,
so quickly, maybe.
exactly. Exactly. On the positive side, we kind of touched on this, but really creative individuals, brilliant idea makers, really artistic as well. And they also say, like, the way that it's described in Ayurveda is like naturally spiritual or devoted. So it can kind of be easy to meditate or connect with like um, a source energy or spirit energy as
Mm.
well, or
Yes,
God.
they're sort of in
Yeah.
ether and space, which is where spirit
Yeah.
lies. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Tend to be a little bit more porous though, and empathic,
Mhm.
hypersensitive,
Mhm.
right? Hypersensitive in terms of all of their senses are a little bit more open.
Mhm.
So again, why these practices, these daily rituals can be so helpful for just grounding that energy,
Mhm.
calming that energy.
The
Hmm.
gas doesn't really have a container, and it disperses, and it doesn't really
Yeah,
have
yeah,
a defined container or identity. So it's easy for that person to kind of flow into other people's emotions or
right.
become scattered. But then that person is going to generate a lot of ideas, which are also in the realm of like space and ether and gas, air.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's so true. Yes, and then for a Pitta person, their tendency emotions might be towards anger, fire, um, a lot of intensity, and then also they also have a tendency towards, in terms of like the positive side of things, they have a tendency towards. We talked about this, is like just a lot of incredible ideas, projects, direction, and leadership. Yeah, the leadership aspect is really amazing. And this is because with their mood, like having such a fire component to them, they can be really, really steady, but also like just directful with the way they speak, and um, also with knowing how they feel as well.
Mhm.
They can kind of tune into that in a more easeful way than I think Vata people might, or even Kapha people might sometimes as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. There's also like a
Yeah.
natural competition, I think. That's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Definitely.
interesting about the emotional awareness. Is that because of the fire, or how does that relate in Pitta? Like,
Yeah, it is. It's more of that fire element, the qualities of fire being like, of course, more hot, dynamic, transformative, and those qualities give way to their emotions as well.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
A comfort in anger, probably, or an ability to feel and express anger and be with
Yeah.
anger.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it can be sudden outbursts as well that they may not feel comfortable with, but maybe it's something that they kind of get familiar with and get to know over time. But yeah, passionate and fiery and, a tendency towards anger. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And cooling work can be really, really helpful. Yeah, just exercises like breathing exercises that are cooling. Drinking cooling teas as well. That's amazing to do. And then using those essential oils, dietary habits that are, generally calming that fire, meditation. Yeah.
Like lots of mint.
Yeah, of course.
Chamomile
Yeah.
and I read
chamomile.
about a meditation where you lie on your back and stare at the blue sky.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's so good. That's so good for a Pitta person.
For the hyper
Beautiful.
competitive. This is your next task. Yeah.
Exactly. It's really good homework for a Pitta person to just be able to lay in the grass and look at the sky. Yeah,
Blue sky.
definitely.
Yeah, the blue
Blue
color.
sky. Yes,
Or go for a
definitely.
swim.
Yeah, exactly. That's so good. Yeah. And for a Kapha person, yeah, their emotions tend to be like just, more lethargic. And so their mood might be heavier, slower, a bit more depressed sometimes, maybe low motivation. But, in Ayurveda, the way that it's talked about is that their heart energy is so strong. Kapha people have like a really naturally empathic and compassionate energy to them that they can just be this listening energy for another person and just be like almost like a grandmother type where they're just sitting with the other person and just, just speak to me, just let it all out, just share all of your feelings with me. It's okay. I got you, type of thing. So yeah, like although they have a tendency towards these heavier emotions, I think the positive kind of aspect of them or how these earth and water type qualities play out is that they're just really steady, loyal listeners as well. And just incredibly compassionate.
Like the water aspect of things is kind of this flowing emotional, but when I think of water, I think of grief too. It's like love and grief and sadness and
yeah, absolutely like feeling yeah, definitely the grief aspect where kapha sits is in this kind of chest area as well, like in the lung area, which holds grief. And so I think that they might have a tendency towards actually holding it more than actually integrating or processing it. Yeah, but all of the practices that are encouraged for a kapha person, which would be more stimulating and helping them to integrate or absorb and process, can be beneficial for, like not necessarily holding on to emotions, but like helping it to release and pass through as well.
So like, allow like that flow of emotion and
definitely.
It was interesting. I started working with calendula this year, an herb, because it just resonated with me so much. And it's a warming herb, and it's good for lymphatic flow. So it seems pretty good for kapha. And it also brings joy. Like it's kind of light and fiery. It's a fire herb. And when I first started drinking it, I was drinking it as a tea decoction. I felt this sort of like sob in my chest. This like, it was like this feeling of like this kind of heavy, like bubbling almost sensation that started to show up, and then it cleared, and then I started to feel more joy, and it was really interesting. Like, oh, is that the water moving through my body? It was very cool.
That's beautiful. Have you connected with other plants in that way, or is that like a first time that you connected deeply with like a plant?
I've connected with other plants in that way, but and I've been doing different practices. It's nothing official, but when a plant resonates with me, working with it as a single plant and just getting to know it a little bit. Angelica's one, Reishi's been one. What else? Licorice was calling to me a lot for a while. Licorice extract. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
sometimes you read monographs, you read about herbs, you're like, oh, that's me, get me that right now. I need to buy it. And I just start
Yes.
drinking. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it just resonates in such a deep way.
Yeah.
You know what's calling you. Well, I wanted to share a bit about tulsi, about holy basil, because it's like it's definitely becoming more popularized. But I wanted to share on it just because it's actually, you know, when you were speaking of like how calendula had this like heart effect on you in a way and your emotional levels, this tulsi really can impact people that in that way. It's so beautiful. So tulsi, also known as holy basil, is a leafy plant, a green leafy plant. And it's in Ayurveda, it's really known to have a beautiful heart effect, like an effect on the emotions, and help people to process as well. It's really amazing because it helps in that area, but it also helps with clearing congestion and mucus and things that can kind of build up in a person. And we know that for a kapha person, being more like watery and earthy, tulsi is like one of the best teas for that type of person as well. For that constitution, just to help to clear energy, to clear the mucus, to clear the congestion, also to clear emotions as well, or help the person to process those emotions. It's incredible for immunity as well. Yeah, as you know. Yeah. Have you drank much of it before?
I have. I've mostly consumed it in tincture form. But actually, before I started naturopathic medical school, like it was before first year, my aunt was working for a company called New Chapter, and she gave me some tulsi, and I remember just being drawn to it and taking it. It was in capsule form. I just remember like having this, I don't know, so this feeling of like hopeful aspiration of like this plant is gonna do things for me. I don't know, yeah. And I mean, like, and as I think it's an adaptogen as well, right? So it helps us adapt to stress. And does it have tendencies to pacify vata too? Because I feel like it's a good herb for helping with sleep and
yeah, it does. It really helps with vata as well. It's just if the person has pitta, it can be a little bit heating, overheating, but yeah, really amazing for vata and kapha.
So it's sort of like
the taste is so good. It's just such a beautiful herb. In Ayurveda, the way that herbs are taught about is actually you should taste them. You should be tasting the herb so that it activates like your taste, your taste buds on your tongue will actually just help to remind your body what it's taking it in for as well. You know, and I'm a naturopathic doctor and an Ayurveda practitioner, so I actually do both. I definitely use supplements and I use herbs in capsule form or tincture form, but I also sometimes when I use Ayurvedic herbs, I'll make sure that I'm recommending them in that powder form, which is so commonly done or traditionally done in Ayurveda, so that the person is really taking it in. And helps to activate their Agni.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, well, there's this kind of like this Western idea of like, you know, things taste gross. You just want to get it over with and swallow it and get it
totally
on.
Yeah.
But to taste it is really...
We're not used to tasting the bitter taste so much, right? Yeah, we're so unfamiliar with that taste.
But the taste of the herb is there's receptors that are specified for taste, and that sort of starts that communication process with the body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is why we love our bitters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, helpful for anxiety too.
And that's the 6 tastes in Ayurveda. I think maybe you can speak about that if you want to, but that was one thing. It's like we have a lot of sweet taste in our culture, because even something like white rice is still technically sweet, and we don't actually consume a lot of bitter. Like we tend to stay away from bitter in terms of just what we prefer, what we expect things to taste like, and then that actually affects our digestion. And actually, you know, bitter, because it helps with digestion, it can help pacify and calm, and so it's this balance of all the tastes as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll share a little bit about the shadrasa, the 6 tastes. In Ayurveda, it's really encouraged to actually include all of these tastes into your diet. And I think that in Western culture, we just have a tendency to limit our taste to mainly sweet and salty, right?
So the taste sour with booze, alcohol.
Right, exactly. So the tastes are sweet, salty, sour, pungent, astringent, and bitter. And if we're looking at which tastes pacify which dosha, it's sweet, sour, and salty that pacifies Vata dosha, because it kind of just helps to warm and then also lubricate. Those tastes help in that way. And then for a Pitta person, we want to include that bitter taste because it's cooling for the system. And astringent is also amazing because it helps to cool the system as well. And sweet. Yeah, so sweet is calming, cooling. So we want to include more of those tastes. For a Kapha person, we want to include more of the stimulating tastes, and that's bitter, pungent, and astringent. And just to help to like awaken their enzymes so that they can also just absorb and assimilate, because they just need more assistance with that. So yeah, I would be recommended to include all of these tastes in one's diet. And, there's a lot of different recommendations in terms of, including, maybe you would include this in like a chutney form, alongside like your veggie or your protein. I think that's a beautiful way to like have all of the tastes included, because chutneys might have like a combo of like having, they could be a sweet chutney, or they could be a sour one, or it could be a pungent one, just depending on what your needs are.
Yeah. To balance everything out. And this is the idea of the balanced diet, is all 6 tastes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, food should be enjoyed, and so including all of these tastes can like also just make you include more color into your food. And when you include more color, your eyes will just start to desire that food more and want to take it in. And that's like a first step also into digestion, is that seeing that food and smelling it.
That's so beautiful. When we talk about tasting herbs, and it even starts before with activating all the senses. So seeing your food is the beginning process of digestion.
Yeah, exactly. That helps to awaken your Agni more.
And smelling, of course, and then the tasting, and then the whole process.
Totally. The whole process, that like the entire engagement of it. In some traditional practices, they recommend getting a mortar and pestle. Do you know what? Do you have one of those? Or
I don't.
Yeah.
But
I love them so much. But like this process of like roasting some of your own seeds for making a spice mix or a masala can be such a beautiful way to like awaken your digestive fire. I learned this practice through this woman named Maya Tiwari. She writes beautiful books, and I often refer to her. But she says that when you actually grind your own spices from seed and you make your mix for your food, that's such a beautiful way and a strong way to keep your digestive system strong and take that medicinal value, but also be reminding your body what to do in terms of smell. Like when you're making that spice mix, you can't help but smell it when you're pounding into the mortar and pestle. You're smelling the spices, you're seeing them, you're really taking it in. And just makes things more enlivened.
It's that whole idea of processing it all, and connecting with the food as medicine. If you think of like the difference between buying an herb in capsule form versus going and harvesting a wild herb and then creating it and making it into a decoction or a tincture and then consuming it, you're connecting on all the stages. And grinding your own spices is like connecting more deeply to the food you're about to consume.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like thinking of like that, the potency of the seed, like the small seed, of how it can be so medicinal for somebody as well, and have such a powerful fragrance to it.
And that you just need such a little amount to really bring your food alive.
Exactly. She says that even if you're not eating those spices, even if you're grinding them, that can be
right.
That can be really incredible to just like awaken your body in terms of reminding it what to absorb and take in. So awakening the digestive fire, Agni. Yeah.
Can you speak
interesting, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so cool. And I know like she writes about, ways to prepare food in terms of cutting vegetables along their life.
Oh yeah, you've read her book.
I know, I love her.
Nice.
Yeah. She like heals herself by moving to a cabin and just getting back to her roots.
Yeah. Did you read Path of Practice or A Life in Balance? Yeah. Oh, I love that book.
Path of Practice is amazing. Yeah, she's like a fashion designer in New York City, really successful, got ovarian cancer, and then decided to turn to a more ancestral way of living and it's really beautiful. I mean, you read it and you're like, I can't really do that, but it would be, but there's just practices, like how to cut a carrot and to cut it with intention. It's this idea of intention I took away from it. And
totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that ancestral piece is so beautiful and so key. Is that, she was talking about, like, growing up in Guyana, and how she just strayed so far away from her traditional practices.
Mm-hmm.
And that when she got ovarian cancer, and when she was like faced with the prospect of not being able to survive it, of like just being somehow reminded of like those ancestral practices, because they were, spirits were coming to her, ancestors were coming to her and reminding her of these practices, and then just diving right into these practices again. And she talks about how, like these ancestral practices, they live in all of us, like in different ways, right? So, I'm so grateful. Like, I really, kind of came back to this medicine, which I believe is part of my family's traditions, although that even in the past couple of generations, not necessarily practiced, at least not with the food-based practices. Some other practices are, I would say more of the spiritual practices, but, coming back to these, to the medicine has been so beautiful for me, because I feel like there's a resonance there too, in terms of the ancestral focuses. Coming back to the basics of food, just preparing food, having a mortar and pestle, and making your own teas and chutneys with it, or masalas, spice mixes, which can just be such reminders of how food is medicine on a day-to-day basis as well. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are some, have you gone back to any of your kind of like practices that your Nona would have taught you?
I was actually just thinking of this because I did, so this is a little bit like biohacker level, but I did the Viome test recently, which is a stool test that looks at your microbiome, so the bacteria in your gut, and then it makes food recommendations. And sometimes, like sometimes you can get in the weeds with, so kapha, I don't have great digestion. It's definitely a weak point, is always trying to cultivate agni. And so I just was interested, and it was really interesting because a lot of the foods that were recommended are those like Italian spices like thyme and oregano and basil. And then, a lot of people have issues with the Solanaceae, the nightshade family, like tomato, eggplant, and zucchini, and all those foods were recommended. So
amazing.
And like I have a friend who's also Italian. He loves eating out, and but if I go to an Italian restaurant, I can't really eat anything because I don't eat gluten, I don't eat dairy, and that's like everything that they make that they serve. But I had this heirloom tomato salad and with fresh herbs and wine yesterday, and it was like, wow, just felt so nourishing, so beautiful, fresh, like it tasted like Tuscany, and it felt really good. Something about it felt really right. And so as you're talking about ancestral living and eating, I haven't really been consuming many tomatoes or eggplants or, fresh spices and with drizzled in olive oil. And so going back to that, I mean, I felt like I digested it really well. So there's this idea of, like working with more of the traditional fresh cooking.
Totally.
Ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing how it like almost felt like it felt so satisfying to you, right? Like compared to, eating something else that you might prepare that's not necessarily from like your ancestral way of eating.
Right.
And how that can like satiate you in a different way. Like it's also satiating you probably on an emotional level as well.
Yeah. There's something about like the fresh tomato, which I never liked tomatoes as a kid, but the fresh like grape tomatoes and heirloom tomatoes, it was like, this is the arugula, and it was beautiful. It was I really enjoyed it. I was like, I'm gonna I have different plants on my balcony. I'm growing rosemary and tomato, and I have chard, and I have radicchio, and I have a lot of radicchio in my fridge too that I've
bitter.
Nice. Exactly. And so that's like, I'm gonna make a salad for that after this interview, a salad with my radicchio and olive oil. But I think like moving towards more bitter greens and these like really flavorful leafy greens and spices is
Totally. Do you use rapini, or are you into rapini? Did you grow up with it?
I love rapini. And yes, yeah, there's even this terrible joke that my family tells about it. So because it's the I don't know, I could say it, but so basically it's like that someone, okay, I'll tell the joke. So
Yeah, I gotta hear
when
it
people
now.
get into an elevator and so one woman gets in and she's like, oh, I'm wearing Chanel No. 5, and someone else walks in and she's like, oh, I'm wearing, and some other perfume, I don't even know names of perfume. A third person walks in and has and farts and is like, oh, this was Rapini, 99 cents. That was my fragrance. So now it's like, this is just like a Rapini 99 cents.
That's
terrible.
Great. I love that
but
one.
fart jokes is part of the Italian culture.
Well, I gotta share with you the South Indian fart joke then. Is that, South Indian people, like, they usually eat rice with every meal, but also lentils with every single meal. Like, it's lentils like all day, every day. So the joke is like, South Indian people can levitate, right? The gas.
We're not spiritual. The secret's just lentils.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny.
But they're so good.
And they're so good. Yeah. So definitely ancestral food. Definitely.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And my mom said recently, it was so sweet. She was like, I'm really missing tamarind. My body is just really missing tamarind right now, because tamarind is huge in our cooking. And so I've been trying to, I live with my family, and I've been trying to make more tamarind based soups for them, and it's been making her really happy. And also it's just such a strong resonance for me. It's like something I grew up with. It's just amazing how like the fragrance of something can have such a huge impact. That and curry leaves, oh, they just like, it's a smell of home. Yeah.
Well, and the scent activates our memory really rapidly, and so it's like, you smell home, you smell your childhood, and you're like, something about it feels right.
Totally. It's amazing.
And Sairupa, can you speak a little bit about oil massages?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. So oil massage in Ayurveda is called abhyanga, and it's recommended to do every day as long as you can, if you're able to, if you're physically able to, and if you're not menstruating. So it shouldn't be done while you're menstruating, and it really shouldn't be done during pregnancy either. It can be you can apply the oil, but it's just not to do a massage, which is what I'm going to describe. So what's recommended is, I'm going to talk about what you do, and then I'll talk about the benefits of it. So what you do is you actually take a plant-based oil. It's usually sesame seed oil that's recommended. That's tridoshic. It's for all constitutions. And it's a cold-pressed oil that's unrefined. So, organic, good quality. And you warm it up by putting it into something like a small glass, and put that into a hot mug of water. So not directly. You don't heat it directly. That's an important aspect, because we just don't want to change the qualities of the oil. And it's recommended typically to do it before you shower. But it can also be done after you shower. It's just you might feel a little bit more oily. And the way that you do it is, you're putting it on with intention in a different way that you would like just a lotion or shea butter or something like that after you shower. So you're taking it in the palm of your hand. Maybe you're saying like an intention of, I want to nourish myself, nourish my body. In Ayurveda, it's really believed that you take in everything through your skin as if it's food as well. So the nutrients from the sesame seed oil can also be absorbed through your body. It's full of calcium and minerals. So it can be, incredibly nourishing for your system. So you would take the oil and, apply it to like central points first. Recommended to apply to your heart or to your navel area. And then from there, you would massage it on your limbs. So you go like long motions on your limbs, and you use the palm of your hand to apply it.
Like up and down.
Up and down. And it's almost like it's like a little bit more of a pressure towards your heart area when you press, when you put pressure on your limbs. And then, round on your joints, and then on your legs as well, just like long motions on your limbs, circular on your hips, circular on all your joints. Take your time with it. It's recommended to do like 5 to 10 minutes of that massage. And then you would get into a hot shower and just kind of let the hot water to penetrate the oil into your system. Get a loofah to scrub it off. Traditionally, you might recommend like a flower chickpea flour, mung bean flour to help scrub it off. Yeah.
Mm.
Your drains can get clogged, so I always, give a reminder for that. So just be a little bit cautious, but there's a lot of ways to kind of mitigate that. Yeah, and all the alternatives. So this is also helpful for detox, right? So it's helpful for clearing. We say like opening the shrotas, the channels of the body, and then helping with detox and elimination of toxins.
Mm.
But that's not everyone's goal. And sometimes when there is like an overtoxin burden, if there's a lot of disease concerns or imbalances happening in the person, then it's actually not recommended to fully engage with it. Applying oil in any way can be nice, but maybe not like the full oil massage and hot shower. Maybe you just kind of apply it to the central parts of your body and then focus on applying to your hands and your feet, especially at night before bed. But the qualities of oil, because it's so heavy, nourishing, it's almost like motherly. In Ayurveda, they use the word sneha for oil, and sneha means love as well. So it's like, I always say it's like a self-love ritual.
And that's exactly what came to mind, is this self-compassion of releasing oxytocin as we touch ourselves and massage ourselves.
Definitely. And again, just feeling, what you feel like in that moment as well. Like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm having tension in my neck and I wasn't even paying attention to that before. Or, oh, for women, maybe noticing, oh, I'm having a lump that I didn't have before. I'm noticing that's something's growing or shifting. So just like paying attention to your body and feeling what you feel like, feeling if you're feeling fatigued or if you're feeling like you have great energy, just another moment to kind of tune in and like kind of be present with your body.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. And sesame oil is a good one for every constitution.
It is. Yeah, it is. And, generally a kapha person might not enjoy a lot of oil. And so sometimes for a kapha person, abhyanga is not even recommended. And, they might almost feel like averse to it because they naturally have lots of lubrication. So it might be more enjoyable to do like a dry brush.
Right.
Yeah. Which won't have the same effects, but it'll be beneficial for a kapha person in terms of opening up the channels.
Right.
Of their body. Yeah.
Like as we do like more lymphatic massage and lymphatic drainage practices.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So beautiful. Yeah. And is there anything you'd like to leave off on, or any last thoughts? This is amazing.
Let's see. Well, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that I really feel like Ayurveda can be for anyone. It's such a beautiful philosophy and gives so much insight in terms of learning more about who you are on the constitutional level. And with that can really bring you maybe closer to that space of swastha as well through some of these rituals and practices. So yeah, I think that, I just feel that, although it might seem vague that it's like a South Asian medicine or Indian medicine, that it can be for everyone and really a beautiful medicine to learn more about.
But it's really, I mean, its name says it all. It's like the wisdom of the body, like the wisdom of the vital force. And so it's giving us wisdom to inhabit our bodies.
Yeah. I love the way that you put that. Exactly. Just guidelines, wisdom, insight into embodying ourselves more.
It's funny, I've heard it translated as the science of life. And I studied life sciences in universities, my undergrad. And so it was like, and in Spanish, las ciencias de la vida, science of life. And they're like, whoa, that sounds really esoteric. Like, when I learned that that's what Ayurveda might translate to, I was like, oh, it's kind of what I studied in undergrad, although it was nothing like that. It was holistic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's so great to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This is an awesome conversation, and we'll have links on where people can find you in the show notes. And is there anything you'd like to share? So where can we find you? You have an Instagram?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. I'm at Dr.Sairupa, Sairupa. And I also work at Aurum Medicine, which is a clinic in Toronto. I actually only do virtual appointments right now, but I do both Ayurveda focused appointments or naturopathy appointments, and might include some Ayurveda as well, depending on where you're located. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, amazing. So yeah, we'll have links to your website and your Instagram page in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you. And thank you so much for joining. This was a great combo. I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. So good to chat.